Good afternoon, chart watchers. Thanks so much for joining us today here on Market Watchers Live. My name is Dave Keller. I'm the Chief Market Strategist here at StockCharts.com. Coming at you live from the global headquarters of StockCharts.com here in Redmond, Washington. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Getting into the trading week here on Monday, September 23rd. Let's do a quick checkup on the markets, see where they're at, and then I'll share with you what's coming up today. It's going to be a really cool show with a great guest, a lot of good topics here. Quick check on the markets. You know, the S&P back flat after opening down on the day, kind of recovering a little bit, just above flat for the day. The NASDAQ composite as well. So really the indecision sort of equilibrium we've hit in the markets in the last couple of weeks, sort of coming through so far on the trading day today here on Monday. Mid caps actually leading the way, which is an interesting one. You have mid and small caps outperforming the S&P 100 so far. Mid caps up 28 basis points so far today. Going down a little bit on the sector page, you can see that the consumer trade, it's what's working so far here, but very notably consumer staples outperforming consumer discretionary. We're going to get to that in a little bit, looking at that over the long term. It's a traditional chart of offense versus defense that we've talked about, but interesting to see those two groups at the top. At the bottom, we have energy, we have healthcare, and then communication services really dragging down. And financials, which are some of the more interesting long-term charts, things like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you know, arguably testing or threatening to break to all-time highs, you know, flat right in the middle of the range. So those are some interesting groups to watch. In terms of the specific industries and where we're seeing leadership, look at paper stocks up at the top, but also gold. And I tell you what, out of a whole world of charts that don't look great, the XAU, not too bad, right? I mean, gold stocks starting to emerge, gold, the GLD or the gold spot price looking pretty attractive, and then retailers right below there. So it's interesting, you know, you have some more traditional defensive groups. You also have things like retailers and semiconductors, which arguably are more of a leading indicator to market performance. So, you know, really completing today is sort of a microcosm of, I think, where the markets are at, where this yin and yang of are we going up, going down? I don't know if we're going to answer that right today, midday on Monday, but we're going to try to get to it. I want to welcome on joining us today, Grayson Roze, one of the bigwigs here locally at StockCharts.com. Grayson, thanks for coming on.
No one's ever called me a bigwig before, but thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
No, it's good. And we have to share with everyone, yesterday attended the Seahawks game together, which was pretty cool with a group of people. My daughter's first game at CenturyLink Field at the Seahawks game, which was pretty awesome. So thank you so much for introducing us to some really good local football. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, we didn't squeak out a win there, so I'm still a little bit bitter, but you know, glad you came, glad you had fun.
Absolutely. Now, you're coming on, and I'm really excited what you're going to share, because there are a lot of things about StockCharts TV and the StockCharts platform that are emerging that are really just going to keep getting better. Can you just give us like a teaser of what's coming up later on the show?
Absolutely. We're making some pretty big changes actually here on StockCharts TV. So all you viewers next week, you're going to be hit with something pretty new. But I'm really excited about what we got coming out, especially your show, Dave, which I'm really looking forward to bringing to the channel. So we're going to be kind of running through that, giving you the logic and the new schedule and everything that we're going to be changing with what we're calling our fall lineup here on StockCharts TV.
Perfect. Well, really good. We're going to bring you off back in a little bit. Thanks again, Grayson, for coming on today. I want to share with everyone just the upcoming schedule for Market Watchers Live. So we have Tom's workshop tomorrow on the 24th on Tuesday. Again, anytime you have an opportunity to hear from someone like Tom, breaking down how he uses the platform StockCharts.com. It's a really good opportunity, so I'd encourage you to check that out. On Wednesday, I'll be back hosting the show, and we have Tim Ord from the Ord Oracle. He writes a column on the Top Advisors Corner on StockCharts, and he'll be joining me on Wednesday, which would be pretty good. And then Dan Russo, who also hosts a show on StockCharts TV, will be joining as a guest on Thursday, the 26th. So make sure you check out those for the remainder of the week on Market Watchers Live. Today we have a really fun afternoon planned for you. We're going to break down what's coming up with StockCharts TV, and there are a lot of new shows coming on. My Closing Bell show coming up. We also have Larry Williams, Dave Landry, some fantastic market experts that you may not have heard as much from yet on our platform are going to be coming up starting next week, which is pretty cool. Grayson's also going to break down ACP, the advanced charting platform. And again, there's so many cool things happening on the product that I want to make sure that he has time to do it. After the commercial break, we're going to come back, and I twisted Grayson's arm a bit and asked, besides your helping run the company, can you also just talk as a trader, as an investor? And he reluctantly agreed to let me pick his brain a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about his investment process. And again, anytime I feel you have a chance to learn from others that are trying to play this game as well, it can be very, very helpful. Then we're going to have the 10 and 10, and the first stock as a preview is going to be Square, SQ, which is again, not having the chart in front of me, but just knowing how it looks. It might be a little painful for any of you that are holding the stock at the moment, but that's okay. We'll talk through how to think of it. So let's just get to just a technical update on the markets, sort of the headlines, the news, how to think about the charts. And again, the goal, I think, of a show like Market Watchers Live is not to give you every headline that we've seen, but think of the markets from a technical perspective. How can we use charts to illuminate, to illustrate, to navigate the markets and understand them a little better? So let's start with the chart of the S&P 500, which for me is always the place that I start when I'm looking at the trading day, trying to make sense of things. We can see, again, big picture, we've had the sell-off from the July high. We've had this August really congestive area, played very nicely with the Fibonacci levels that I often bring on the chart, starting with the June low, going to the July high. Look how we sort of played around between those levels. We closed outside, but would always come back in. That finally changed at the first week of September when we broke to new closing highs. And that's when we sort of settled into this new range between about 29.60 up to 30.20. And that's really the range that we've been. And if you look at it over the last 2 weeks, it's always helpful to just look left on the chart and look at how long it's been since we've been at that same level. For 2 weeks, we really essentially have not gone anywhere. We've sort of been in this period, we've drifted higher, totally fair, but every time we've threatened to break out of this range, we've kind of come back down. So far today, putting today's action into proper context, we're at this point at the highs of the day, 29.95, teasing the 3,000 level. But again, really at the midpoint of this range for the last 2 weeks. And so I think from a big picture perspective, all eyes are on these previous highs, this 30.25 to 30.30 range. If we can break meaningfully above there, and again, to do that, you would have to see a lot of the individual stock charts start to look a lot better than they have been. They've been way more corrective than this chart might make you think. So if you start to see names like DuPont break above resistance, things like Goldman Sachs and the other banks that have hit resistance break to new highs, or at least break above those resistance levels, you'd have to have that sort of happen, and also have to have some leadership emerge, of which we really haven't necessarily had it just yet. So overall, that's where we're at for the big picture. And this is just a 5-minute chart, refreshing this really quickly, looking at just the trading day. And again, for me, when I'm looking at the trading day in the short term, my go-to is a 3-day, 5-minute chart. And for me, that's sort of that short-term price range, just seeing where we're at. You can see we opened down at the lows from Friday, sort of fluctuated around here, sort of this triangle pattern, broke out of there about an hour ago, and so far sort of continuing to trudge a little bit higher. So again, now we're getting up to the previous highs and seeing if we're able to break through those a little bit in a meaningful way. I want to jump forward a little bit, talk about commodities. So, I mentioned earlier the XAU, and I think the chart of the GLD is a really interesting one to look at. So again, if you ignore everything else in the world and just focus on this one chart, overall, is this leaning more bullish or bearish? And I would argue more on the bullish side. We've had this nice long-term run, and sort of what I have called the fat pitch chart is something that has a nice long-term uptrend, short-term weakness. So it's pulling back to a more accessible, more buyable level. And that's arguably what you saw with gold as it pulled back just above the 50-day. Didn't quite get there, but overall long-term uptrend, higher highs, higher lows, established another higher low, but pulled back just a little bit. And so far in the last, Friday into Monday session, trading back higher. So again, if something like the GLD is leading, I don't know if that necessarily makes me feel great about stocks more broadly, although, to be totally fair, they can move up and down in conjunction. That's happened plenty of times before. In terms of the GLD, something that would concern me is this bearish divergence. And you see that with a number of these charts we've had, and arguably maybe with some of the fixed income charts as well. We have higher highs, but you have this lower high in the RSI and the momentum. And all that maybe hints at is that as this market's gone vertical, as it's really accelerated, you've had less and less momentum on each of those pushes higher. And again, a lot of times that suggests that it might be a little bit of a weakness to come. But overall, the chart is in good long-term shape. I'm going to fast forward a bit to the Mindful Investor Live chart list. So this is a public chart list that I have running. And again, if you don't have access to this, just shoot an email to thefinalbar@stockcharts.com, and I'm happy to send you a link to this. That's an email we're going to be using for my show that starts next week, the Closing Bell show. That we'll use that as a way to communicate. So shoot an email there, thefinalbar@stockcharts.com. I'm happy to send you this link. It's a really good way of just breaking down the markets from a high level, looking at breadth, looking at key ratios. And I just want to walk through a couple of these before we bring on our guest, Grayson Roze. So, first chart I would look at is the S&P and then the breadth by cap tiers. So on StockCharts, you can add a series of price data below the main price. And so I'm looking at the S&P 500 here on the top, just the closing prices to kind of get the noise out of it. And then I'm looking at breadth. So this is the cumulative advanced decline line for the S&P 500, for the broad NYSE, and then it's the mid-cap index and the small-cap index. So generally think of it as the largest companies here at the top, and then the middle companies, and then the smallest companies there. And again, it is just the early days of this, but look at how the breadth in the S&P has come off just a touch. Breadth on the mid caps has come down even further. Breadth on small caps has come down a little further. So in a corrective period, if the market's really starting to come off a little bit, you would see this start to be exaggerated. This would be the beginning of a pattern that continues. You would see small cap, again, generally speaking, in a vacuum, this is what would tend to happen. You'd see the breadth in small caps come off as the smaller, more speculative companies sell off earlier. And then the last thing that would probably rotate lower would be the advanced decliners on the S&P. So again, this is early days. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but this would be the beginning of that pattern. So you look to see if these things start to break down. The small cap index would be the first to potentially break down through the previous high. So that is a chart I'm watching very quickly. You can see all these lines are in green. I actually switch them to red if they start to turn more negative. Have not done that yet, but it's something I'm certainly watching. The next chart I wanted to highlight was the new highs and new lows. So this is, again, the S&P 500 on the top with the 50 and 200-day moving averages. And then we have the new highs in green and the new lows in red. And this is for the NYSE, again, the broad exchange. And then this is for the S&P 500. So out of those 500, it's actually like 505 companies now, if I remember right. How many of them are at a new high today, new 52-week high? How many at a new 52-week low? And the reason why you have it laid out this way is you're looking at what the broad S&P is doing, and then you're looking down here to see if you get confirmation or a lack of confirmation, right? Or some sort of convergence or divergence of these two. And what I'm seeing here over the last couple weeks, look at how the S&P has sort of chipped away higher, approaching these previous highs from July. If you look at the new highs in the NYSE or the new highs in the S&P 500, look at how we've had a series of lower highs. So as the S&Ps tried to move higher, we have less and less companies breaking to new highs. This makes sense if you are a devoted chart watcher because you know how few stocks are at 52-week highs. They're out there. It's names like Procter & Gamble that Grace and I were talking about just before we came on air. There are names out there that actually are breaking to new highs legitimately, but it's less and less stocks. And so in a healthy market, if the market's breaking out, you would, in my opinion, want to see these start to rotate. You'd want to see a convergence, an agreement with more new highs as the S&P is breaking out. And again, if the S&P does get above the high from July, I would argue you'd have to see way more new highs. Otherwise, that's just mathematically not probably going to happen. So again, we've not seen that confirmation yet telling us that the world is all clear, that things are looking pretty good. Final thing I want to leave you with here is looking at breadth in the form of stocks above the 200-day and stocks above the 50-day moving average. So this is the S&P at the top. This is the percent of S&P names above their 200-day moving average, percent of stocks above their 50-day moving average. The 200 has fluctuated and sort of hit that peak level around 75%. I've often found that a lot of times that's where a market tends to peak out. So here last September, here earlier this year, every one of these peaks has been matched by about 75, 76% of stocks above their 200-day. This is the one I wanted you to pay attention to, which is the percent above their 50. Look at similar to the new highs. Every time the S&P has gone to higher highs, this has gone to lower highs, meaning less and less stocks are participating in that up move, right? There's sort of this divergence. So again, this is another divergence that I'd want to see resolve to the upside to really believe that we're seeing further upside on stocks. So you can probably tell from the way I'm phrasing things out, I am not a raging bull on stocks. I would argue that there's a lot of reasons to be cautious. And for me, it's all about trying to break down some of those warning signs for all of us here together. Before we bring on Grayson, I want to share with you the mystery chart. We tried this last week and actually it was very well received, so we're going to bring it back here today. My question to all of you, what is this chart? This is a chart. You can see this is the price data going back for 1 year. You can see it trends from the upper left to the lower right. We're also looking at the relative performance of the series at the bottom. So that's the price series relative to the S&P 500. I would ask all of you, what is this chart that we're showing? Toward the end of the show, we will have the unveiling. We'll have the release of what the ticker is, and we'll discuss what it is and why it's of importance, or why it should be of importance to all of you. The way you can participate in this, if you go to the poll on the screen for StockCharts TV, you can vote for what you think it is. Just put in a ticker. We also have the chat room where you can enter stocks for the 10 and 10, which we'll get to after our guest interview here. So I'd encourage you to go and make sure you know which room you're going into, but take a vote on the mystery stock, and also share what tickers you want us to look at as part of the 10 and 10 later today. Want to bring on our guest, Grayson Roze. Again, Grayson is one of the leaders of StockCharts.com here in Redmond, Washington. Agreed to come on to share with us. There's some really cool things coming along with StockCharts TV, with StockCharts.com. We thought it'd be a great time to bring him on and just share what's been going on here and what you should expect as a viewer, as a subscriber. So Grayson, thanks again for coming on today.
You're welcome, but I don't think I'm going to talk until I'm reintroduced as a bigwig. I really like
Forgive me, our bigwig,
yes,
Grayson Roze. Go ahead.
Okay, there we go. Now we can have a conversation. Yeah, no, actually, I wanted to start by welcoming you, Dave, to Redmond. So some of the viewers might not know, but you just moved this past summer all the way across the country to come join us at StockCharts and be our chief market strategist, and we're, as a result of that, launching a whole bunch of really exciting things on StockCharts TV and at StockCharts overall. We're going to be doing a lot with Dave. You're going to see a lot more of him. But I guess, sort of from all of us here, welcome. It's really, really good to have you.
Thank you.
We've been
Appreciate
looking forward to this for a while. So
absolutely. Good to be here.
Yeah. So as a result of Dave coming out here, we have decided to make a whole bunch of changes. One of those was that we said Dave is obviously great in his market commentary and his analysis, his understanding, his background. I mean, everything that you're doing here, that first 15 minutes of the show was fantastic. It's a good example. So we wanted to bring more Keller to StockCharts TV. So we started looking at ways to do that. And when we started having conversations with a bunch of our other hosts, we said, you know what, we've got so many people that we've been kind of holding off, so many other people like Larry Williams, like Dave Landry, that are really excited about doing more on StockCharts TV. They've come here, they've been a guest for you guys in the past. But we have a lot of those guys that have said, I'd love to do a show every week. I'd love to be a part of what you guys are doing. So when we sort of took a look at that and took a look at the timing with Dave coming on board, we realized it was a great opportunity to sort of introduce a new, what we're calling a fall lineup for StockCharts TV. Sort of take a fresh look at our content, reboot a couple things, add some more shows, add more coverage throughout the day. So that's actually what I'm really excited about, is that we have now more coverage throughout the day, more content from a longer list of hosts. And it's going to start even earlier and it's going to end even later. So as for you guys, as the viewers, you get more StockCharts TV, more expert analysis, more content from us every single day of the week. We're going to have Dave's show every day, weekdays. We're going to have shows from Tom Boley, Julius DeKempenaar, Larry Williams, Dave Landry. And then in addition to that, we've got our existing slate of programming, which is all fantastic stuff. So we are very, very, very excited to launch this new fall lineup starting a week from today. It's going to be kicking off on September 30th with Mr. David Keller. So we've been working on this for quite a while and really can't wait to bring it out for everyone. So here is our fall lineup in pictures. These are all the beautiful logos that our graphics team has been working on for these new shows that are coming out. We're going to get into the schedule in just a minute, but I thought, David, it actually might be fun if you and I just kind of talk through some of the content that we're going to be doing on this. Obviously, first up on Monday, right at the close, we're going to be launching the final bar with you, Mr. Keller. And I know you've been talking about some of the things that you're going to be doing on the show. I'm excited for the format of your show because I think it's very different. Obviously, we've had guest interviews on MarketWatchers Live for a long time, but you're going to be doing kind of shorter, more punchy, I think, guest interviews. A shorter show overall, so it's going to be a little more digestible, but a good mix of content, review, market analysis kind of stuff, but also with some strategy conversations, some sort of higher level behavioral conversations, all that kind of stuff. Anything you want to add to that? I'm really looking forward to your show.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun, and my producer and I, we've been working really hard to sort of line up some really cool guests for the first couple weeks. The goal every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is going to bring on some of the street's top technical analysts, market strategists, and just have a quick couple minutes from them on what are they seeing that's of most importance. So I feel like if you watch the show every day for the week, you're going to get a bunch of different perspectives on what's moving and what's important, which is going to be really cool. But also, as you hinted at, I think the better conversations potentially are going to be some of the longer conversations we're going to have. So people like Craig Johnson at Piper Jaffray, Ralph Acampora, I mean, some of the legends of technical analysis, and also some of the up and coming strategists sort of, learning about their process and how they do all of this and how they make sense of the markets is going to be really, really fun. I think we're going to unpack a lot of really cool sort of nuggets of wisdom for everybody together. Should be good.
I'm looking forward to sort of the shorter time frame too, the 30-minute format. I think it's going to allow us to really keep things focused and sort of punchy, I guess.
Should be good. Yeah. Yep.
So after that, on Tuesday, we're launching 2 shows. This is going to be October 1st. In the morning, we're going to be launching Trading Places with Tom Bowley. So Tom is actually leaving MarketWatchers Live. MarketWatchers Live, actually, as a result of these fall lineup changes, will be going away. But we're just kind of shifting the hosts off into their own shows. Again, to provide more coverage throughout the day and more content in sort of different formats. So everyone is still going to be here. We're still going to have the same great MarketWatchers content. It's just going to be shifted around a little bit. But Tom is going to be launching his own show, just him, just Bowley. Trading Places is going to kick off on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. So he's actually going to be 30 minutes before the market opens, which I think is a great way to showcase Tom. I mean, he really is a short-term trader, and he is watching the markets from the close to the open, really actually diving into a lot of the pre-market action and what's been happening, news headlines and how that's going to affect things right off the bat when the market opens. So I think putting Tom right at that open, right before the open actually is going to be a great way to really bring him in. I'm looking forward to his show. So that's going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern. And then later on that Tuesday, on October 1st, we're going to be introducing Sector Spotlight with Julius de Kempenaar. For those of you who don't know Julius, he's been on MarketWatchers Live quite a bit, but he is the creator of RRG charts, those charts with the 4 quadrants, and you see things kind of rotating throughout time. It's all this relative strength approach, and it's a really beautiful way to visualize the markets. But it takes a lot of sort of tutorials and lessons, and you really got to see someone use it in action to sort of get how it works. Once you do, it's easy. But Julius is going to be really highlighting that, showing how he dives into the sectors of the market and kind of goes even deeper than that, using RRG charts specifically. He's going to be using a lot of standard price charts and candlesticks and everything like that, all the charts that you're used to. But in addition, bringing in those RRG charts and really providing sort of a showcase for how to use those. I'm excited about that. Are you looking forward to either of those? What do you think on those two?
So Julius, I've known for many, many years, and I learned a ton from him when we first met, and he started showing me how he used RRG. And so the fact that everyone gets to sort of get that experience with him is awesome, because it's one thing to sort of see the tool and try to use it, but I mean, he designed it for a purpose, and he really was thoughtful about how he laid things out. So getting someone like that to lay it out is going to be pretty good. And then, I mean, everyone watching here, I'm sure, is very familiar with Tom's work. I mean, it's a must watch in my opinion. He does such a good job about breaking down, especially with things like earnings, what's probably going to move and why. It's fantastic to get someone like him. And then also, just so we know, one of the chart watchers asked about like Dan Russo, right, who's doing his show. Things like that are still happening too, right? So there's a lot of really cool content.
Yeah, again, we're kind of shifting things around a little bit, but Dan's show actually, which is always aired a little bit later, sort of after it was recorded, Dan's show is actually going to be airing live, which is going to be really, really
awesome.
Great. I'm looking forward to having Dan on there live. His stuff, if you guys haven't watched Stock Market Today with Dan Russo, it's fantastic content.
Real good.
Really great stuff. So then in addition, later that week on Wednesday, we're going to be launching Dave Landry's Trading Simplified. That kicks off at noon Eastern. Dave is awesome. Actually, Dave and Dave just got together recently for a conference at the TSA San Francisco. But Dave's approach to the markets is all about simplifying things. And it's amazing sort of how he can take things and just streamline it all, boil it down, simplify everything. It's kind of beautiful what he does. You had a great opportunity to actually see a presentation from him recently at that conference.
Yeah, it's funny. He takes something that a lot of people, I think, try to overcomplicate and make super complex, and he completely simplifies it in a very meaningful way. And I love the way that he talks not just about that, but about the emotional side of it. So not just, what tools you need to use, how you need to use the different, stops and use your different charts together and how you use them in conjunction, but also the mental state, how you approach the game of trading mentally. And that's where we had a lot of really cool conversations over dinner that I think a lot of that's going to come out in the show. So that's going to be a really neat one.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to that. And then we've got a big hitter on Thursday coming out with Larry Williams. He's going to be hosting Real Trading, a weekly show on the channel. I mean, what can you say about Larry? He's just kind of an epic figure in this whole industry.
Yeah.
And kind of similar to Julius and some of the other guys that we have actually on the channel as well. He's invented some indicators. He's done his accomplishments. I mean, the whole, I always love that story with his winning the trading competition and everything and bringing his daughter into it. He's he's got an amazing background. So, I mean, a true trader, someone who's really watching the markets closely and has just a lifetime of experience to share on his show. He's actually, it's been funny, the conversations that we've had with Larry about, what he should do with the show. And he wanted to have a very specific focus on what he should be doing. And we kind of pushed him to say, Larry, you've done everything. You've got this incredibly broad knowledge and just all these experiences. Just get on there and talk. I mean, just have fun with it. It's going to be a great show. So, I think we're all looking forward to seeing what we get from Larry. It's going to be great stuff.
Yeah, that's a rare treat to learn from someone like that. That's going to be great.
Yeah. So the last one that's down in the corner there is All Aboard StockCharts. And that one is a bit different because it's actually more geared towards instructional, how to use StockCharts. It's from Chip Anderson, our current president and founder of the company. He's been doing that actually for the past couple Saturdays. So that one is part of the fall lineup, but it's already going. If you're a new user to StockCharts, it's a great, great, great show to tune in and watch. It's after hours. It's on the weekends, Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And it's very different. It has a different sort of vibe to it because there's no market analysis content in it. It's really about how to use the platform to its full advantage. Take full advantage of everything that StockCharts has to offer. So that's another one that we have that's going to be coming out on Saturday as well. It's actually this Saturday in addition to next Saturday because that one is currently going. But definitely tune into that if you're new to StockCharts or if you're thinking about a membership and you want to kind of see how things work right off the bat. That's a great place to go. Tune into the Chip show on Saturday. So here's our schedule. Again, we have the final bar launching on Monday. That's going to be weekdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday is going to be jam-packed with 2 shows. That's going to be October 1st, a week from tomorrow. Trading Places is going to kick off in the morning, and that is going to be airing actually 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, both days at 9 a.m. Eastern, and that's another half an hour show. Sector Spotlight with Julius kicks off also on that Tuesday. That one's going to be a little bit later at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Then we have Dave Landry launching Trading Simplified on that Wednesday. He's actually going to be at the current MarketWatchers time, so noon Eastern. Larry kicks off his show, Real Trading. Oh, that's a typo there. Larry kicks off Real Trading on Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, which I'm just absolutely can't wait for Thursday to roll around. I'm really excited about his show. And then we've got All Aboard. So we've got a jam-packed week next week for our fall lineup. Again, I wanted to cover this too briefly. There are a couple ways to watch all this content that we do on StockCharts TV, and I wanted to remind everyone. Obviously, you've got here on the site, stockcharts.com/TV. You can always tune in and watch what's going on live. But we do record everything. You might have watched our videos on YouTube. You can always go back and catch the recordings. You can subscribe to that channel and actually get notifications from YouTube directly whenever we post a new video. But we've got content going up on that channel every single day. And if you can't tune in live, we do stuff during market hours. Well, except for your new show coming out right at the close.
Nope.
But most of our content goes up, during the day. A lot of people are working, so that YouTube channel is actually a great place to go to get the content after it's recorded. Now, the last one is the app. We actually do have an official StockCharts TV app. You can download that for free in the App Store. for iOS or in the Google Play Store if you're on an Android. But it's another great way to kind of watch on the go if you want to download it on your phone or your iPad, anything like that, your tablet. That's another great way to watch this content on StockCharts TV. So go check that out. Love to have you download the app. By the way, be sure to follow us. Dave, actually, it'd be fun maybe for you to give a quick overview of what you're going to be doing on social, because we've been building up the StockCharts TV Twitter presence and on Facebook and obviously YouTube, like we talked about. But you're going to be doing some fun stuff, it sounds like, for the Final Bar specifically through email and also through Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. So the goal with a lot of the shows, and especially with my new one coming up, the Final Bar, we're going to try to engage with all the viewers as much as we can. So we have a Twitter account at the Final Bar, at Final Bar SCTV. I should remember that more quickly. But we'll be putting content out that way, and you're welcome to ask questions, engage us there. We'll be following that very, very closely. And also, via email, the Final Bar at StockCharts.com. The goal, again, the benefit of these shows, I think, is being able to interact with the hosts. And again, with some of the people we have hosting these shows, it's a rare treat to be able to interact and ask questions and get responses from these people, helping you learn how to invest better, how to understand the markets better. So absolutely, we're going to do everything we can to get in front of you.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me is that it's very different from like your traditional sort of financial news outlets or anything like that. These hosts really are there. Like Larry is a good example. He's really there to connect with people, with normal people. He wants to engage with all you viewers. Dave is the same. David is the same. All our hosts are, they really love that personal interaction that they get through a platform like StockCharts TV. So be sure to take advantage of that. Send them emails, send them ideas, anything that you want to see on the show is always great. So now I wanted to jump briefly before we cut to a commercial break here. I wanted to talk about what's next for StockCharts. We've been talking a lot about StockCharts TV, but what's next for StockCharts is pretty big. We have a product coming out called StockCharts ACP. ACP stands for Advanced Charting Platform. And this is kind of the next generation of StockCharts technology. The important thing to note, our current charting platform, SharpCharts, is not going anywhere. That will always stick around. We think that SharpCharts are great to set up your charts and kind of keep them for long-term study. They're not going to move on you. They're not going to go anywhere. You can print them out easy. SharpCharts are a great platform that we're going to continue to invest in heavily and develop. But in addition to that, there's a big push into more interactive charting, kind of being able to shift between timeframes just with the scroll of a mouse and really kind of zoom in on things, take advantage of some of the latest web technology that's out there. So as a result of that, we have been working very hard over the last few months, last year and a half actually, but a bit more publicly over the last few months. We've been working very hard on something called ACP. And ACP is our push into interactive charting. So I'm going to cut over here to a demo where we can actually see ACP in action. So here I've got a chart of VTI. And what you can see is this whole chart is interactive. I can actually scroll around and move this chart around. I can add tons of indicators and resize everything dynamically. So it's a much more dynamic sort of interactive way to view the markets. We're going to be doing tons and tons of demos on this and lots more showcases, especially on Dave's show and everything like that coming up. So keep an eye out for more on ACP, but you can actually preview this, go play around with it. It's not fully released. We're calling it sort of our beta light. It's kind of a preview version of ACP. But you can actually go play around with it right now, StockCharts.com/ACP. Go see what we're working on and have some fun playing around with this new platform that's going to be coming out later this year.
And it's been, Grayson, it's been fun coming out here now and being able to work on what this is going to become. It's a super powerful charting platform. It's going to, I think, change the way a lot of people are able to use stock charts in a very, very good way.
I think so too.
So it's a lot more to come with that. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
Everyone, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, chat with Grayson a little bit more, trying to pick his brain on his investment process. We'll see you in a minute. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Market Watchers Live. This is Dave Keller. I'm the Chief Market Strategist here at StockCharts.com, joined by Grayson Roze, who's the Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com. Also happens to be a very knowledgeable trader and investor. Before we talk with Grayson, I just want to remind you, have you voted on what you think the mystery chart is? If you have not, now is your time, because in about 10 minutes, we're going to share what it is and why it's of interest to you. So make sure you do that in the poll on the screen in front of you. Grayson, thank you for agreeing to let me pick your brain just a touch. I appreciate it. I would not say that you were overwhelmingly in support of this idea, but I appreciate you being game for it.
No, it's always fun to come and do this kind of stuff. It's it's definitely an opportunity for me to put on a very different hat from the StockCharts pitch and everything like that, and talk to you guys, not as someone who's touching the product, but someone who's using the product. So it's fun.
Well, I tell you what, and when I was first learning technical analysis, so this was like 2000, 2001, 2002, I benefited a great deal from having the opportunity to chat with really knowledgeable traders, investors, guys that have been using charts for years. And it made such a difference in just sort of learning from mentors, right? So what I love about StockCharts TV and why I'm happy to be on and part of it is because we're giving a lot of viewers this opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise. So thanks for agreeing to do it. What I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about your investment process, talk a little bit how you approach things from a charting technical perspective, how you think of it, and just see what sort of ideas we can uncover a little bit. How about this? Can you just touch on how would you describe your routine, right? And when I'm talking with people that are just learning to invest, I talk a lot about routines, right? Getting in some sort of disciplined way of reviewing things that are of interest to you, right? Things are important because otherwise it's just kind of a shotgun approach. It's all over the place. So can you break down your routine a little bit? How do you approach things from a technical perspective? How do you go about it every day?
Definitely. So, I like to stand up at seminars and things like that and create some drama in the room by saying investing is not difficult. What is difficult is maintaining a set of routines and having the discipline that you need to follow those routines day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out.
Yep.
That to me is what makes investing really difficult. There are so many tools out there, so much educational content. And you got great guys like you on StockCharts TV every day sharing their thoughts on the market. There's so much content and instructional things and helpful tools out there to make you a better investor.
Yeah.
What there is not out there is something that keeps you disciplined and focused on the markets and executing your routine. So to me, that really is the secret to success. I am a big fan of weekly routines. I have a set of daily routines that I run through as well, but it's mostly just kind of watching things. I've got some scans that I run every day. I run a new 52-week high scan every day. Right at the close, just because it's great to keep a running list of what's making new highs, and I love to sweep that. But basically at the close, I start looking at what the markets did, what the sectors did. I've actually got a little bit of a spreadsheet that I keep to sort of rank the sectors, which is fun. And then I just run through the stuff that I own in different portfolios, and that's really it on a daily basis. I've actually gotten away over time, partially because I work here and I'm busy and I got stuff going on. I'm human. I've actually gotten away from a lot of the sort of active analysis during the day and watching the intraday charts and things like that. And I've moved a lot more to weekly routines. So for me, I've got this very clear set of weekly routines that I run through every Sunday. It's a religion. I got to do that on Sunday or I've totally failed for the week. And I actually sort of track this, use this app called Streaks to sort of track how many times in a row I've done my portfolio review to keep me honest and everything. It's fun. But I actually had that up here. Let's see if I can bring it up. This is basically it. I mean, this is my set of weekly routines that I run through every Sunday. I use an app called Workflow. I showed Dave this before the show, and he thought it was really cool. It literally allows me to make a checklist, and I can check these things off. You can see I'm kind of halfway through it. I've done the important stuff, and then I've got to go in and do the fun stuff of finding new stocks and seeing what's making new highs and things like that. But that's it for me. It takes a couple hours on a Sunday morning. It's great to wake up, have a cup of coffee, and those routines are basically run through the market from the top level down, from the highest level down through the sectors, down through the industry groups. Review the stuff that I own, go through my watch lists, run a couple scans, that kind of thing. But it's really market down into my portfolios. Review that every week religiously. And one thing that's important for me too is that I'm really looking at the same charts every week. So I've got this set of about 11 charts that I use to kind of gauge the market. And it doesn't cover every single corner of the market, but what it does do is I've got 11 charts that I'm looking at every single week, and every single sort of change that the market makes, most of them are covered in that 11 to some degree. And by watching the same charts every week, I can over many years, I've been doing this for a long time. I really know the moves that those charts make kind of intimately. So the fact that it's the same set of charts every single week is what really makes it powerful for me. But it's come down to a lot of weekly routines. It's this kind of dedicated Sunday portfolio review.
Right.
That's really important.
There is so much fun to unpack in what you just said. I hope everyone listened to that, because that was really, really cool. I mean, there are a lot of really good points in there. The last point you made, which was looking at the same charts every week, that is such a great point. And I know from my previous role managing professional analysts, when I first started to get to know their routines, every single, and these are people that are successful, for years, have just have developed these great routines. They all had a stack of charts, some of them on the screen, some of them just paper that they would flip through, but the same way, the same seat, the same thing, and they would do it. And they knew those charts intimately. Yeah. I mean, they knew exactly what was coming if you asked them to do it. And it was just because of that routine. And if you got out of that routine, you all of a sudden were just one level disconnected from what was going on. So that's a really cool one. There's so many other things to unpack there, but the one that strikes me is just using a checklist like that.
Yeah.
I use an app called Asana, which is kind of a similar thing. It's more of like a task management thing, but boy, it's the same thing. It's like every week I know on Monday, these are the things I'm going to hit. Yeah. But the best thing I feel like that you mentioned, all of those things are meaningful. The fact that you don't look at things as much during the day, it's almost a blessing that you have a day job because you're not tempted
it sort of forces
to pay attention, right? I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, the value of not staring at things tick by tick and sort of trying to digest the intraday action versus having more of a regular time when you come back and just check on where things are at, right?
Yeah, I mean, markets move in a healthy mix of rallies and reactions over time. Over a long-term weekly chart, let's say, it's supposed to move in a healthy mix of up and down. And stocks are the same thing. They're supposed to move in a healthy mix of up and down. They're not supposed to go up every single day, not supposed to go down every single day. And so by sort of sucking yourself back one level from the day stuff to a weekly view, not necessarily looking at like weekly bars or weekly candlesticks or anything. You can still look at the daily charts, but to sort of suck yourself back and say, I'm not going to be as sort of overly focused on what's happening today relative to yesterday. For me and for the time frame that I trade and invest over, that's incredibly powerful because otherwise you start getting sucked down into this. Oh my God, it's down 2 days in a row. I'm getting really worried. I got to sell it, and then you make a mistake. And it's all time frame dependent too. I mean, I'm speaking as someone who's trading primarily 6 to 12 month positions.
Right.
I'm not getting in and out of stuff in a week, so that's important. I hope everyone hears that. I'm giving you one perspective with one time frame and one sort of risk profile and everything like that. It's very specific to me. But I think that concept applies to a lot of people. And I think the maybe the key takeaway is make sure that your routine is in line with how you're actually trying to approach things, right? And a lot of times you find a disconnect. People trying to think they're doing one things with their investments, but their routines don't speak to that, don't play very nicely with that, and that's going to be a mess. This was awesome. I wish we had like 3 hours to keep going through all this, but I promised you I would ask you, and I wanted to share with everyone. I love to ask guests what their one chart is. So if you had one chart that I asked you, besides just the S&P 500, what's one chart that you would look at right now to get a read on what's going on? Very quickly, what would it be and why? Good question. You actually sort of covered it earlier, and it's going to take me too long to actually go in and pull it up in my account, but it's a breadth chart. Okay. To me, breadth is a very, very beautiful thing, and you did an incredible summary of kind of why breadth matters. But I like to think of the markets as a party, right? And Dave, you and I are cool guys, but if the party is just us, it's just us two sitting around the table, it's probably not going to be the most fun party. If we got all our friends and our family and tons of people participating in that party, it's a big event. We got everyone there having a good time. Right. That party is going to be a lot more fun. Right. So if we think of the markets as a party, and we think of kind of breadth as the participation in that party, the stronger the breadth numbers are that I'm seeing in the charts, the happier I'm going to be about that market. Because the more confident I am that the market is actually going to be a good time.
Right.
So I have a breadth chart that's really important to me. It's actually an NYSE chart, and I kind of look at breadth with a 10-day moving average.
Got it. Okay.
Charted as an area chart, actually, which is kind of an interesting way to see it. But at some point, I'll come back on here and I'll show you that breadth chart. But that would be my one chart, I think.
Beautiful. Hope everyone paid attention to that one. That's a good one. Maybe if you share it with me, we can get it out to everyone.
Yeah,
in some different ways. Grayson Roze, thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. This was fun to just pick your brain in terms of how you approach things, but also earlier giving us a preview on StockCharts TV on StockCharts.com. So many cool things happening here. So
yeah,
thanks
be
so
sure
much.
to tune in a week from today. Everything kicks off a week from today. It's going to be, I think, a big week here and a lot of exciting things to come. So looking forward to it.
Beautiful. Grayson Roze, everyone. Thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. I want to transition now to the 10 in 10. This is where you've thankfully submitted tickers of things that are of interest. We're going to break them down one at a time, and I'll very quickly, lightning round style, sort of talk through the charts and how I would look at them. The first one that we received, and thank you again so much for putting in suggestions, is Square, ticker SQ. It's funny. I was actually talking with Grayson about this particular name earlier. Boy, painful if you're on the long side of it at the moment, because essentially what's happened with this is a stock that, a lot of promise, a lot of, potential long-term upside. And right here in July, as it's testing the previous highs, never really gets to a new closing high, but never follows through. Every time it goes above, it comes right back down. Then we have this gap down the beginning of August, and it just never looked back. And again, if you've not looked at gaps too often, it's a whole set of rules, set of discipline to pay attention to. But very quickly, a gap down and then a downside follow through. Quick version of that, it's not good. That is not an attractive pattern. So now, very, very simply, you have a pattern of lower highs, lower lows. We've broken down through the lows from the end of May, beginning of June, and overall, as long as we keep that pattern going, pretty destructive. So, right now, support at 56, but I wouldn't be surprised if we keep drifting lower. Once we establish a higher low, I think this is an interesting one to look at, but have not gotten there yet for sure.
Okay, next up is IFN India Fund.
Rachel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your help.
Love being here.
So number 2, IFN, the India Fund. Boy, this is something that's jumped up very quickly, right? What's interesting on a chart like this, I don't want to say that this is an easy chart because they never are. I mean, this is a challenging game by any measure, but look at how it plays nicely, what I would call with support and resistance, right? So there's a support level established here in May. There's another low in end of August, beginning of September, comes right back where you'd expect. So if you draw a horizontal line there, it played out just like you'd want to, around $19. Now it's gapped up, and then we have this upside follow through here today on Monday. So the challenge now is we're entering what I always call a supply area, right? It's a level at which sellers have come in before. So what you're looking for now is to see some sort of higher low. We've arguably established that here. So it's tough to buy a chart or to invest or to recommend something on a day like today when it's up so dramatically. But you want to see some sort of pullback, and then overall it's in really good shape. And you just want to see if it's able to follow through there. But look at the relative performance, how it's jumping to new relative highs today. Pretty good chart.
Okay, and then we have IWM, iShares Russell 2000.
Yep, small cap stocks. If you listen to the beginning of the show when I was talking about the broad market, you probably get a sense of what I think of small caps here. I try to not make it too obvious what I'm thinking, but it's hard not to sometimes when you're looking at the charts like this. So the challenge is, right, if you compare the Russell 2000 to the S&P 100, for example, they are dramatically different, and the Russell 2000 is certainly the weaker of the two by any stretch of the imagination. The S&P arguably has rallied above resistance. It's had more of a push higher, approaching the all-time highs. The Russell 2000, on the other hand, is just stuck in this trading range. So if you didn't know that the market overall was testing new highs, you'd wonder why anyone would be investing in stocks at this moment, because it's just kind of sideways, or it's gone absolutely nowhere in 6 months. That's kind of what the Russell 2000 chart has shown you. Every time we hit this resistance level around 158, 159 on the Russell 2000 ETF, we come back down. And so overall, it's hard not to expect a similar type of pattern until we're able to drive above the 160 level. This is something you have to just be cautious, and I would argue more negative than positive.
Okay, the next one up is X-Ray. And you might have to help me with the pronunciation here.
We'll just call it X-ray. How about that?
Yeah. It's,
When in doubt, go with tickers,
yeah,
Rachel. All right.
It says densely
we'll-
Serona.
Okay, that's fair.
It's X-ray.
Listen, the good news with technical analysis is you don't need to know how to pronounce the name of the company. The bad news, or what I would tell for everyone, is again, and someone asked in the chat room earlier about, paying attention to just the technicals versus the macro picture. And I would argue what I'm presenting, at least in my presentations here on MarketWatchers Live, is one dimension. We're looking at the technicals because I feel like that's where a lot of people can upgrade their discipline, upgrade their toolkit. This is not to say that you could do this in a vacuum, and I would not be doing anything that I'm even remotely suggesting without having a good awareness of what a company like this actually does. So don't, the technicals are one really crucial piece that I feel people could do better with. But don't get me wrong, there are other parts to the game for sure. So a chart like this coming off of support. So this is one that actually looks pretty compelling from a risk reward perspective. And here's why, right? It's approached the 200-day and remained above it. It hit support around 49 and bounced off of it. We're now testing swing highs. So a swing high in my mind, just look left on the chart. What's the previous levels at which buyers have been exhausted or where sellers have come in? If we're able to close through here and follow through maybe above the 50-day moving average, you then would have a rotation from distribution to consolidation to accumulation. And if that would happen, boy, we're really close to making this look like a really attractive chart. But the risk reward is you have limited downside based on the support level, and you've got upside back to the previous high. So overall, at a really compelling level here potential. That's a good chart.
Okay. And now we have GDX, Van Eck Vectors Gold Miners.
Yep, gold miners, right? So I mentioned gold earlier. I looked at the XAU, and this is a similar read what you'd see here. I think it's a really interesting chart here. Just breaking above the previous high from September, making a new high for the last couple weeks. I like the follow through here. And again, this is when a lot of stocks right now are sort of tapering off, sort of drifting lower at the lower end of the range. This one's actually breaking out a little bit. I like that. And I like the fact that the relative strength is starting to improve. So overall, gold in general and gold stocks are actually pretty interesting here. Again, the challenge with any of these is the resistance that we're leading up to. But overall, I think it's setting up pretty nicely.
Okay. And we have
down, that feels really bad. But look at how that ended up being the low for the year almost, right? The thing just rallies right back to new highs, closes the gap very quickly. You then once again drift to the lower end of the range. You jump up very quickly and you're going higher. It's a challenge with a lot of biotech names, this sort of thing, where you have this binary outcome. Either it goes to 1 million or it goes to zero, is what we would always jokingly say, right? It's such a binary outcome based on a drug approval or something like that, or some funding or things like that. So these are challenging from a technical perspective because traditional rules are very difficult to follow. But what I would say is support and resistance levels tend to work pretty well because those are the only price levels that people are able to grab onto. And what you've seen now is a jump up, a gap up. It's now drifting higher, but now we're sort of range bound here. So in my mind, this is sort of a holding pattern of sorts where you have lower highs, you have higher lows. This has to break one way or the other. Either this resolves to the upside, it resolves to the downside. And again, from a technical perspective, that's where the mo is, that's the momentum, and that's where I think you have to follow. But again, with any names like this, it's always a bit of a crapshoot because it's so binary based on fundamental news, right? On drug-related news.
okay. And I actually have one of these, Roku, ROKU.
Here we go. So Roku, talk about a chart that went from really good to really bad so quickly, right? This rotated so nicely. On a weekly chart, it doesn't look that bad because it looks like we're holding above this support level, just above 95, okay. But look at how quickly we've come down. And this doesn't look like much, but we're going from 175 down to 105. That hurts. That's a big drop, everybody. So that is, a lot of times the charts can be very deceptive. This is something that went from 25 to 175 down to 100. So these are huge swings that you're seeing on the chart. And it is undeniably in more of a bearish configuration now of lower highs, of lower lows, breaking down through the 50-day instead of finding support, which is what happened previously. This is the type of chart that I would be really skeptical of at the moment and want to hold off until you see some signs of accumulation. The next level, if there's a line in the sand, would be maybe the 95, 96 level. But just based on the price action, I think you have to be concerned. And those of you that are more Candlestick aficionados, I'm showing this as a bar chart, but do you know what this pattern is right here? It's actually a bearish engulfing pattern. We have an up day and then a lower close, and the range of day 2 engulfs the range of day 1. Short-term distributive, so that would have been the first maybe red flag at highs as it's making all-time highs, that there's maybe some inherent weakness, and we've certainly seen a follow-through of that so far.
Okay, KTOS, Craters, Defense and Security.
All right, we are going to go very briefly through the remaining couple here, so we have time for the fantastic mystery chart here. KTOS is one that, again, I'd be very concerned with, only because we've dropped so quickly. A nice gap down today. And after a gap and then the downside follow through, again, the game's not over. This is an active bar. So what you never want to do is look at the current bar and think that that's it, because the day's still, there's a lot of game left today. But if it closes down in this range, it's the kind of thing I think you have to be very skeptical of, because now we're down near support, but we followed through. A breakout has now failed. We've gone lower. The RSI never got to overbought. Relative lows, I think it's a chart you want to probably avoid.
Okay, AVAV, AeroVironment.
Sure. This is a really interesting one. I like charts, and I mentioned I was on the TD Ameritrade Network last week, and I mentioned I like trends you don't need your glasses to see. This is a rotation from distribution to accumulation. Look at the nice rally off the lows, overbought, but has now pulled back a little bit. If all charts looked like this and you could buy at a nice viable entry point, I would feel pretty good. It's a nice, interesting setup there on a defense stock. That's a good one.
Okay, CARA, Cara Therapeutics.
In healthcare now, another biotech name. Again, biotech in general, if you look at a bunch of these charts, they don't look awesome. And the reason is because they're all starting to break down a little bit. I don't like this resistance here. I don't like the fact that we've traded down to support, and a break below 2150 would be a downside follow through. If we hold here, could be of interest, but at this point, leaning more negative than positive. That was it. 10 and 10. Awesome. Boy, they go so quickly. I was going to say, I pat myself on the back. I think I stayed on time there for the most part. That was pretty good. Okay, I'm getting a marginal guess on that. Let's finish up our hour. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Did anyone guess what the mystery chart was? Did we have any good guesses to share, Rachel?
I have guesses.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Hit me with a couple.
OXY.
Okay.
TNX.
Got it.
XOM.
Okay.
Netflix, NFLX.
Okay.
FTV.
All right. No one got it so far. I will review the chat, and I will acknowledge anyone that did. Full disclosure, I cheated just a little bit. If you were a thoughtful chart watcher and you looked at the price scale on the right, you'll notice that the price was inverted. That was sort of the hint that we needed to flip it over here. That's actually the chart of utilities flipped over. That's a common technique to sort of unplug from chart biases, from mental biases. If you flip the chart over a lot of times, it can be a great way to disorient you. And all you need to do, if you're looking at a chart of the SOU, just hit a minus sign beforehand. You can invert it. Charts that you like, make sure you do that sometimes, because a lot of times you'll uncover maybe a different way of thinking. And overall, this is a chart that is going to new lows, which means the XLU continues to go to new highs, continues to outperform. Pretty decent chart to pay attention to. Overall in the market, we're hanging in okay. I think all eyes are on the S&P and whether we're able to follow through on the upside or whether we sort of hold tight. We're still below that 3,000 level, which is an important one to watch. So to pay attention to that going into the close today, see if we're able to get the follow through we need. We've got a great week here on Market Watchers Live. I hope you can join us tomorrow for Tom Boley, his workshop. He's going to have his own show coming up starting next week, which is I'm certainly going to want to watch. I hope you do as well. Tim Ward and Dan Russo will round off our guests for this week on Market Watchers Live. Thanks again, Grayson Roze, for joining us today. There's so many cool things coming with StockCharts TV, StockCharts.com. We're thrilled that you're going to come on this journey with us. And as always, we love to gather feedback on how we're doing with StockCharts TV. We want to make this better for you. So at any point, answer the survey that you have on your screen and let us know what we can do better. From StockCharts headquarters in Redmond, Washington, I'm Dave Keller. Thanks, everyone, so much. Have a great day.